Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin ETF approval and its debut on Tuesday in the New York Stock Exchange. Now, if you like crypto content, you should like and subscribe to this channel so you can get all the future updates. Keep in mind, this is not financial advice, it's strictly an opinion. Bitcoin just had its futures approved. That's a pretty big step in terms of Bitcoin and crypto's legitimacy, like its road to legitimacy. And like I said, it's starting on Tuesday on the New York Stock Exchange, which is one of the largest stock exchanges of the world. Now, I've mentioned previously on this channel that I do have my reservations about this ETF strictly because it exposes people to the futures and not the actual Bitcoin itself. So in this scenario, I would much rather have a trust that's exposed to Bitcoin than an ETF that's exposed to futures of Bitcoin. Because me personally, I still think that's a little bit shady. Why do I think it's shady? Because Bitcoin is a 24-hour market, meaning that in order to have proper futures based on it, you would be focused basically on a 24-hour market. You would be more likely to be pegged to a perpetual futures market. And if it's set up on a perpetual future market as opposed to a traditional one, which is based off of timelines, and it's like basically, let me just break this down. A regular futures contract is based off of timelines, meaning like let's say we say the price of Bitcoin is going to be above 60K by November 1st, or it could be below 60K on November 1st. But no matter what, you're taking a bet on it being on one side or the other, and you get paid. You get paid by percentage depending on where you are upwards, or you lose by percentage depending on where you are downwards, and that's called a margin call. Now, when it's on a timeline, it's a little bit less volatile in terms of market manipulation, whereas when it's stuck on a perpetual contract, which is constantly rolling, meaning that you aren't actually subjugated to timelines on your contract, you're actually subjugated to price points. Meaning that, let's say hypothetically, you're like, I think the price of Bitcoin is going to go up at the current price, let's say 60,000. Every dollar goes down from 60,000, you're losing money. And then there's a set liquidation price. Let's just say if you're on, let's say you're on a high leverage, it could be, let's say 55,000 or 50,000, meaning that if Bitcoin makes a move that's big enough to liquidate you, people are just going to take your money and the market's likely to bounce back. And that's why I tell people to stay out of futures. And especially now that this is being approved, it's like the most important time where people should get the fuck out of futures. Because if there's an ETF backed by those futures, it'll become lucrative for whales to fuck with the markets, dump and pump them, to take people out long and short, basically steal their money, and then distribute it probably as profits from the ETF to shareholders and dividend holders of that ETF. Now, I could see a lot of problems for this in general for traders that are playing futures right now. I personally don't see a point in playing them, considering that Bitcoin has the 1% rule, which is every $100 million will move it about 1%. So you don't really want to be stuck playing futures when now it's lucrative not only for whales to take you out, but for Wall Street to take you out. So I guess it really depends on how this ETF gets paired. But if it's on a perpetual contract, it's going to be a big issue. If it's on a regular contract, I still don't really see it as a good idea because you're backing Bitcoin by speculation at that point. And we shouldn't be backing any asset by complete speculation, even if Bitcoin is considered speculative. It's just not a good idea to back speculation by speculation. It doesn't make any sense. For me, it actually makes me realize that Gensler might be even worse in terms of what he could do to crypto than I thought. Because if he, let's say, takes in all that money for the ETF, for futures, meaning that he doesn't even have to have Bitcoin backed by the fund, he could have those futures rolling, and he could be technically buying Bitcoin with your money. And you wouldn't even be wiser. You wouldn't even be subjugated to being exposed to having real Bitcoin. You would just have the contract that, you know, forces people to pay you out. But the thing is that futures are kind of gambling. So you're backing the actual stock by gambling, and he could be buying real Bitcoin with your money or doing other things with your money. So I see it as another shady thing that Wall Street's about to do. Naturally, you know, they're full of it. It's what they like to do. They like to scam people. But that's no surprise. The other thing, too, that I wanted to mention was that the only good news of this whole futures-backed ETF is just the idea that there's going to be exposure to it. Exposure to Bitcoin, meaning that more people are going to recognize it as something real, because now they can't avoid it. It's an ETF in America now. And not only that, but like, they can't get rid of Bitcoin. They've tried. It's not going anywhere. People trust it more than their government at this point. So it's becoming more and more difficult to take it out. So I think they're starting to understand that, and they're just trying to get their hooks in deep as possible, so that way they can control the market as it stands. Now, that's basically my opinion on that. If I had to choose between all these things, I would say you're better off just buying Bitcoin. And if you don't buy Bitcoin directly, buy a trust that has exposure to Bitcoin. And then after that trust, I would say you're better off buying mining stocks, and then this ETF last place as things I would buy related to Bitcoin. So I guess that's my opinion on this whole subject. Maybe it's a bit hard, or a little bit I guess blunt, to say that I think that their ETF is a scam, and I would rather invest in a Canadian ETF that has exposure to it than this ETF. But this is a beginning. If things get better and they make a real ETF that's backed by actual Bitcoin, then that could be more valuable than what this is, in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, and subscribe on our page, and we'll see you guys soon.